Welcome to World Missions University's Major Prophets, Bible 211. This lesson is on prophecies during the Exile, the book of Lamentations. In preparation for this class, you should read Lamentations and the notes and outlines for Lamentations by J. Vernon McGee. By the time you finish with this class, you will describe the significance of key themes of Lamentations and its place within the history of Israel. While the book of Lamentations doesn't announce its writer, most believe that it was written by Jeremiah. First, the Septuagint and Vulgate introductions agree that Jeremiah was the writer. It is also a Hebrew and Gentile tradition. There are many similarities between Lamentations and the poetical portions of the book of Jeremiah. The writer himself had to have been an eyewitness of Jerusalem's destruction. This fits with Jeremiah as being the writer. The book was written at Mizpah in 586 BCE when Jerusalem was a burned-out ruin. The book is a lament over the destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon after months of siege. We look at this book as a sequel to Jeremiah. To understand a peculiar attribute of Lamentations, one must be familiar with the Hebrew alphabet. Unlike the English alphabet, which includes 26 letters, the Hebrew alphabet only includes 22. I point out the first three letters of the Hebrew alphabet. They are Aleph, Bet, and Gimel. You also need to keep in mind that unlike the English language, which is written and read from left to right, the Hebrew alphabet is written and read from right to left. Most of Lamentations is written as an acrostic. An acrostic means that the first word in the first verse begins with the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph. The first word of the second verse begins with the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Bet. The first word of the third verse begins with the third letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Gimel. Each of the 22 verses of the first chapter follow the same pattern until all 22 letters are used in each of the first words of each verse. Acrostics are used to help a person memorize large pieces of information, such as the entire chapter of Lamentations. We already know our alphabet. Knowing that the first verse begins with the first letter helps us to remember the rest of the verse. Knowing that the second verse begins with the second letter of the alphabet helps us remember the rest of the verse. Chapter 1 has 22 verses total, one verse for each letter. Chapter 2 follows the same pattern, 22 verses total, one verse for each letter. Chapter 3 has 66 verses total, or 3 sets of 22 verses, one for each letter. Chapter 4, again, 22 verses total, one to each letter. Chapter 5 doesn't follow this acrostic pattern. The book is fairly short, and the outline is fairly straightforward. The first chapter is the first lamentation, Jerusalem's grief. The second lamentation, God's wrath. The third lamentation, continuing hope. The fourth lamentation, sin's consequences. And the fifth lamentation, prayerful confession.